so much of it is done on the front end, building relationships with them, whether it's our sit down meetings, our goal setting meetings, our why meetings, or the passing you by and just bringing them in and have a conversation, or the phone calls at night, or text messages or whatever. It takes a tremendous amount of investment on your part, and sometimes that investment, blows up in your face, and it seems like it doesn't matter, but a lot of times it does, and 90% of the time. What I do probably better than a lot of people is I relentlessly ask questions. I relentlessly look, and that meant I would go to the source for a lot of things. And so when there was when triphased was coming out, I was pounding, all the reading and reaching out to Cal and reaching out to people that were doing the program and how they were implementing it, whether a tier system with Joe or, all these different types of tools and all these different things. I'm constantly going to the source and trying to, when I do that, I build a relationship, and, obviously being in the positions that I've been in, I'm usually able to be a resource back to those people as well. And so when you do that, you constantly.
Just before the podcast gets started, I want to say a big thank you to everyone who watches it and supports me on the daily. If you could leave a rating on the podcast, that would help me land people that I would love to talk to. So if you're enjoying the podcast and you like what I'm doing here, make sure to rate it. Yeah, thank you. Hello and welcome back to PA Chaka. Today we've got one of my greatest mentors and someone that's the whole reason this podcast exists is he mentioned that I should probably do this and start making my connections and networking. And here we are. Hi, Coach Mac. How are we doing?
Manny, great to be on your show, man. I'm excited for you.
Thank you. It has been hard, and the learning curves that you sort of told me about have happened, and I'm glad that I have been doing this because my network has just spiraled out of control, which is amazing for me.
Yeah, fantastic.
Most people will know you, but if you give them a rundown of who you are and what you do.
Yeah, well, I've been doing this a quarter of a century now. 25 years in the business. I've gone back and forth between mostly college football and NFL football. Had a few stops outside of football with some special forces units and working in the private industry with play, where I consulted with teams kind of all around the world. But now I'm currently the head strength coach at the University of Washington and a former mentor of one Manny, podcast extraordinaire, and just living up in Seattle and enjoying life.
It has been amazing to sort of see the progress that UW has taken over these past 2 years. How has that felt being so involved with them?
Yeah, we got here 2 years ago, and the program was was going through a tough time. We were very fortunate that we had great kids here, and got a chance to jump in right away. And a lot of our strengths, culture and leadership and unity and those types of things were things that the players really embraced, and brought in a couple key pieces, and we've had a lot of success on the field. But I think, as having been here and in a role in our staff works. Our staff puts in the hours, and our players put in the hours, and there's no shortcuts to success, and our guys have paid the price. That's for sure.
That's actually something that I've kind of been one thing I'm waiting to ask you is, before everyone starts to lift or does like one of the big sessions that we do, you always read out from your leadership guide and you install these sort of lessons into them. How did that come about?
I think, my college football coach was somebody that was really instrumental in my life in terms of just kind of really taking the game past the field and really tapping into the values that the game provides, and those are things that I feel like you have a huge responsibility as a mentor to young men in my situation or young athletes. The root word of a coach is to take somebody on a journey that they can't take themselves, and
Mm.
that's our job is to help them walk a path that they have not walked yet, and part of that is giving them inspiration and motivation, and if you can use stories and um, quotes and videos and things like that to help uh, bring that message to life, I think that's all the more it keeps their attention, and it helps break up the monotony as well.
Mm.
So I think our players really appreciate that, and it's you've kind of arrived as a coach when your athletes start using some of those quotes and some of those stories on their own.
What was the best example that you have of that?
Uh, I think um, I would use a story of an explorer, and this is a story that I was told when I was an athlete of explorer that set a series of life goals when he was 16 years old, and it was crazy things like you know hunting on every continent in the world and hiking every volcano or non-active volcano, and making a raft and sailing places. It's just this really crazy story of this guy that had written this list when he was really young, but then had accomplished you know most all of it by the time of his death. And I think the idea of goal setting and really holding yourself accountable to
Mm.
things that you set for your life, and the map that you set for your life. When so many times a lot of athletes they play victim, or not play victim, but they feel reactionary to what happens to them. Whereas that idea of goal setting and being able to go and accomplish anything that you wanted to accomplish is in your control. That was big for me, and I think it was something that I've used through the years that has resonated with athletes as
Mm.
well.
That stories on the weight room wisdom, and doing these podcasts, I've sort of learned that all S&C coaches have these like go-to phrases or stories that they tell their athletes to sort of push them and motivate them and to take that next step. And as soon as I finished reading that book, I was like, I thought back to my athletic career and what were some of the things that were passed down to me. And now the one that I've found myself using the most is shy boys don't get sweets, and that just means that if these opportunities will come, but it's up to you to take them and sort of push to get that opportunity. Because if you don't get it, someone else will take it. So like,
That,
sorry.
I said absolutely, yeah. That's a great one.
So every time my athlete feels like they can't do something or they're going up for a big scouting event or something, I'm just like, look, shy boys don't get sweets. You either go in, go balls to wall, and just make that opportunity yours or someone else's opportunity for the taking.
Yeah, it's a great one.
When it comes to sort of the development of your program and how you take interns on, can you talk about the University of Coach McKeefery?
Yeah, that was given to me as a moniker that was given to our intern training. I didn't give that to myself, but
I could say it though.
I don't think that it was a term of endearment when it was given, to be honest with you. But yeah, I think I was very fortunate early in my career that I had two really good mentors that I did internships with that really that I valued, that I feel were pivotal in my development as a coach. And I think the internship has been given really kind of a negative connotation, especially now. But the right internship can be so impactful and pay dividends in so many ways. And so I think it's part on the person that's looking for internships to really do their research and really identify great learning environments, but people that pour into them. But that was always my goal, was to create an internship that was impactful, and not just the X's and O's of strength conditioning. I wasn't trying to teach our interns everything that I knew in my head. I was trying to teach them our program, and I felt like if they understood our program, then that's a really good up. That gives them a leg up in their next rung on the ladder. But I also wanted them to understand that there was so much more to this job than just counting to 10 every day and writing programs, and learning how you're evaluated, learning how to network, learning how to do these different types of things, the relationships that you form in the community that you're in, and how the relationships you form with the athletes. So many internships are filling Gatorade coolers and folding towels, and our interns, as do a lot of extra work as well. But like, we throw you in the fire, like you're thrown in a rack right away, and those athletes are looking at you, and you've got help, you've got people right there to kind of for bumpers to keep you on the straight and narrow, but it forces you to grow up as a coach really fast.
And I can personally vouch for that.
I think when you go through that, it's life changing. It's life changing, and I think, as you can probably attest to, like, there's typically not an intern that's gone through our program that hasn't come out a much better coach on the other side, and something that they point to even decades later as a pivotal time. And I'm not saying that flippantly, in that, I think it's this mystical thing, but I think we really work hard to try to create a great experience. And, we typically, I think the other thing that we do is we don't really shy away from, people that maybe don't look the best on paper, people that maybe don't have experience. Maybe they don't, I've done this long enough to where I've had hundreds of resumes for internship spots. And a lot of times the ones that look the best on paper are not the best coaches. And the ones that don't look the best on paper end up being phenomenal coaches. And so I think it's what you make with the opportunity. And so we give our interns a lot of opportunity, and those that rise to the top, usually we can help kind of move on in different ways. And it's pretty fun to watch them. I mean, at this point, it's been hundreds of coaches that have gone on to careers in strength and conditioning.
I've had most of them on.
You've had quite a few. That's right.
Yeah. So I kind of wanted to say this because I don't think I've told you personally, but on that mindset of, kind of, it's your program to take advantage of if you want it, like, it's there for you to develop. Obviously, I'm from the UK, and the process of getting there was hard in itself. Border Patrol made sure of that. But when I got accepted, I had 6 weeks to make sure you remembered me and knew who I was afterwards. That was the mindset that I went in with. So you gave me all the opportunities. It was then up to me to just show up and show out. And what I'm really thankful for is that you gave me that opportunity to sort of learn and grow from, like, even mistakes that I made. Sometimes the stopwatch, that was not my friend. Sometimes I miscounted, I missed exercises, but I just sort of kept pushing through. And one of the biggest sort of learning curves that I had to take and learn really quick on the fly was, this industry is so fast paced that you're going to get thrown things, and it's up to you to achieve what you want. One of the biggest ones being when I was given the return to play guys. It was Coach Cream that was in charge, but I was sort of deliver the sessions. And that came about because during one of the field sessions, Coach Cream had to do, obviously, his role as a sports science guy and do the GPSs and all that stuff. You came up to AJ, who was our lead at that point, and you were like, "We need someone on return to play guys." And AJ was like, "Manny, go. I was like, what? Because we were what, 2 weeks in, I think. 2 weeks in, and I was given like these group of guys who still had to go through an intense workout to keep up with the demands. But I was like, I was like, what is going on? Is that something that you sort of introduce a lot of to try and see what level each coach is at?
Yeah, I mean, I think at that time you'd done a good job of separating yourself a little bit to where I didn't feel like, that you could mess it up too bad, right? I think, I think it's one of those things that, I feel like when we have all of our full time coaches on the floor, we have them on the field. We have, upwards. I don't even remember how many interns were in your class, but upwards of 5, 6, 10 interns.
Yeah,
We have
80,
enough.
90.
Yeah, we have enough coaches on the floor that there's lots of assistance, there's lots of help, there's lots of eyes, and that's kind of my role, right? Is to see, 360 degrees and see everything, um, and so I knew that you would rise to the challenge. I knew that there was bumpers there in case you got it in over your head, and I also think that the way that we set things up here is we put our full time staff mostly with the Pareto principle, like the upper 40% of the team, right? The upper 50% of the team. And then we bring our young coaches in to work with the other 50% of the team or the other 40% of the team. And that it's great because those athletes, they don't know any different. They're coming from high schools where maybe there was one coach on the floor, for everybody. And now they got one coach for four athletes, and so you guys are kind of growing together, and so
Mm.
you're going to make mistakes, but you're also able to be kind of put into an authoritative position. And by the time you're done, by the end of those 6 weeks, then you might be working with some of our star players just because it's the way it falls into things. But that first couple of weeks, you're drinking water through a fire hose, and
Mm.
and it's coming at you really, really fast. And that's the part that people don't realize. People don't realize that, they go through, they get their degree, they get their certification, they come out of university and they think that, here, where's my job? I have all the credentials. And, there's a big difference between being credentialed and being qualified. Being qualified is having worked in this environment and understand all the things that go into it beyond just the sets and reps and programming and all that. And it's a very small part of the job. Writing the workout's a very small part of the job. And getting them to buy into it, believe in you as a coach, trust the process, and you've been you were a part of it. You saw, things like extra lifts and special workouts, and those things don't just happen.
Mm.
Guys don't just show up because you ask them to, right? You got to create the environment to where they want to be there. And when you got that kind of involvement with your athletes, like we do here, then good things happen. And I think it's being in that environment, seeing it. That's the only true way for you to be qualified to be able to get those types of jobs. And unfortunately, I think there's a lot of people that just throw their hands up and they say, "Where's my job?" And then they get frustrated, and there's so much more into it than that, and
100%. I think as well that you make sure that because you've got such a wide network across the whole world, like you try and sort of see where everyone's landing, you kind of push them towards the right people. What's the sort of process in sort of building that buy-in with your interns?
yeah, I mean, I think it's time, right? It's what we talk about. You spell time, you spell love, time. What you love, you spend time on, and so we put a lot of effort into training you guys, whether it's AJ on the floor teaching you the nuts and bolts of strength and conditioning, or Zach teaching you kind of the administrative side of it, or Fink teaching you guys the programming side of it, or Ben teaching you guys the sports science side of it, or me coming in and teaching you kind of the philosophy and the the profession. I think we did a good job of working using our whole staff really put time into you guys. And I think what we do, I think, is unique, is by bringing in so many of you guys, we create this little community amongst each other that you guys are learning. You guys are, it's competitive. You guys are trying to outdo one another, right? But you're also learning from one another, and you're talking shop in between, and you know, you're scurrying off and thinking about what you would do differently, or whatever. And those things, I mean, it forms relationships that you can leverage and tap into for the rest of your career.
Uh,
And
me and True spent most of our lunch dates on speaking about what we were just doing.
yeah, yeah. I mean,
um,
it's the way it should be, and that's how you grow as a coach. And I think that's what people fail to realize in some of these internship opportunities, is it's not just, the person at the top. It's all these people that contribute to your development,
yeah,
that you walked in having a network of maybe just a handful of coaches, and you left having a network of 15, 20 coaches just like that.
100%. I think a lot of that comes from the number of coaches that actually come and visit you for like just shop talk, and they just swing by. And I met some amazing coaches just by them walking in to speak to you. How's that process sort of come about?
Yeah, I mean, um, I think it's what you're doing now. I think it's putting yourself out there. I think, between speaking and writing and podcasting and being in the business and being a resource for people, and all those types of things, I think that all comes, creates a network that people value you. They want to look you up when they're around. And um, I think that's what I've been very fortunate. The like, I don't have any kind of crazy redeeming quality. Like, I'm not the smartest guy, I'm not the strongest guy, I'm not the fastest guy, I'm not, all those types of things. But what I do probably better than a lot of people is I relentlessly ask questions. I relentlessly look, and that meant I would go to the source for a lot of things. And so when there was when triphasic was coming out, I was pounding, all the reading and reaching out to Cal and reaching out to people that were doing the program and how they were implementing it, whether tier system with Joe, or all these different types of tools and all these different things. Like, I'm constantly going to the source and trying to, when I do that, I build a relationship, and obviously, being in the positions that I've been in, I'm usually able to be a resource back to those people as well. And so when you do that, and you're constantly you're not afraid to put yourself out there and ask questions, and that may be dumb questions, to somebody that's 10 times smarter than you. I don't care. Like, somebody's gonna, you figure you ask enough questions until people start to ask you the questions, and I think that's, for me, I want to know it. And then, I'm just relentless about it until I completely understand it.
Something that really sort of shocked me to that degree was that you were sort of telling us how you sort of still keep up with the latest research, and you watch videos and on the industry and how to progress yourself. Do you ever feel like you'll ever sort of get to that point where you've done enough research?
Yeah, I mean, I had one of the guys I worked for early on. He always had this line where he would say that, I don't know everything. I'm just learning how to ask the right questions. And I think that's where I'm at. Like, I'm learning how to ask the right questions now. And um, there's to do this job, especially as a head strength coach, and manage this staff and lead these different areas like sports science and sports nutrition, and all the different programming and all that. Like, you have to constantly be sharpening the sword. You have to constantly be challenging yourself to grow. And if not, then I don't think people will respect you. And so for me, that's a lot of work because I've got a family, I've got kids, I've got a big, more than a full-time job, that probably more than two full-time jobs. Um, so, most nights I'm falling asleep to some YouTube video, listening to something, about strength and conditioning. And, um, but again, like, my challenge is, this is what I always tell our staff, like, at 48 years old, like if I know computers better than you do, then there's something wrong, right? If I know technology better than you do, Manny, then there's a problem, because I grew up remembering when they put a computer lab into college, let alone having a phone in my hand since I was born, and so like there's a little bit of pride in it for me where I want to know more than everybody else, but then there's the trying to stay up with everybody and make sure that that I can contribute to those conversations, and just know that, to be an expert in speed and balance and power and coordination and kinesthetic awareness and skill acquisition and group dynamics and all these different things, like those all could be degrees in and of themselves.
Yeah. You also do a really good job of sort of hiring the right people for the right roles as well. Because like obviously Coach Fink, he's programming, like the amount of times that I just like asked a simple question and he gave me like this detailed list of why he's doing that, or Coach AJ with the Olympic weightlifting and just S&C meathead. Like me and him just connected on being all about the weights. Cream, he's sports science, Cook, Excel genius.
Hmm.
How do you go through these processes of ensuring that you're hiring the right person for the right role?
Yeah, I mean, I'm fortunate here that that I was able to hire people that I'd worked with previously. So I knew their character, I knew their skill sets, I knew what they brought to the table. What I had to learn in my journey was that I felt like I was a pretty good strength coach. So early on, I hired a bunch of people that were just like me, and that's a recipe for disaster. I needed to hire people that were not like me. That their strengths were my weaknesses, and my strengths were their weaknesses. And so when I did that, I used a Gary Smiley personality profile. It's you're either a lion, an otter, a beaver, a retriever. I think I had you guys take that test, and that helps me to kind of know, like, if I need an otter, I need somebody that's playful, that can bring energy when there is none, like AJ. Like, I need somebody that can bring that kind of juice to the room, you know. But like, he's maybe not the guy that I want doing the discipline, I need somebody that's very meticulous, like Zach, that's gonna think about everything, every little thing that I'm not thinking of. Where I'm just like, hey, look, I want this whole weight room moved outside really fast. I'm
Mm.
not thinking about all the different things that have to go into that, you know. And so I need somebody that can kind of balance me out like that, because you know me well enough to know that I can do something like that, you know. And so I think just knowing what your strengths and your weaknesses are and hiring for your weaknesses. When you're the leader, you get to do that. When you're an assistant, then you have to work on all your weaknesses, and try to make them strengths, and because you might need to be, even though you might be an introverted guy, you might need to be the guy that can bring energy to the room in the role that you're in, you
Yeah,
know. And I think that's part of being a good employee too, is knowing what when you're looking at these jobs, you want to be looking for what do they need beyond the X's and O's, and and if can you bring that to the table or not? Is it a recipe for you to have success?
yeah,
Um, and I think that's a big part of it too.
no, 100%. And when it comes to sort of your interns, because you obviously have the exit interviews, what is it that you sort of look throughout their experience with you, and how do you advise them going forward from that?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've done this long enough to kind of know people's strengths. Like what where their strengths might work in their favor. And I think I also have the perspective of there's a lot of different ways to have success in this field, and sometimes, especially when people come here, they think the only success is to be the head strength coach at a Division 1 Power 5 program. And this is a great job. I love it, but I've had other great jobs that weren't at this level,
Mm.
and I've worked in and out of this industry in various different ways, and so like knowing what's out there and realizing some of the other challenges that come with it, right? Like I've had to buy 5 houses in my time. That's not an easy thing to do. I've had to move my family, across the country and back. Um, those are not easy things to do, but you're not thinking of those when you're 19, 20, 21, 22 years old, and
Mm.
will be at 32 or 42, and so so starting to kind of get an idea of what they value, and then starting to kind of help them navigate the profession and the different roles within the profession that might lead to them having success. I think it's part of my responsibility as a mentor to kind of, to help point them in the right direction, and I've definitely had people that have disagreed with me, and proved me wrong, and that's fantastic. That's, I mean, again,
Mm.
that's, but that's, some of that is, maybe driven by the fact that you wanted to prove somebody wrong, and so like, um, I think it's a responsibility that I don't take lightly, having that type of role. Um, but I also value, I want everybody that comes into our program to have success in some type of way, and helping them navigate that, I think is important.
Yeah. Like for me as well, like I found that when I had mine, I was sort of lost for what to do when I got back. Because obviously the sport world here isn't what is across there. So to me, I was just like, I've got to do something to stand out a little bit differently to most. Is that something that you kept in mind when doing my interview?
Yeah, I mean, I think the, my background, having been NFL Europe and then adopting kids from the Ukraine, and then working and with teams all around the world and speaking internationally, like it gave me a perspective for strength and conditioning on a global level, and seeing it different ways. And I think, if you're a young strength coach and you're not thinking strength and conditioning through a global lens, I think you're missing the boat, because there's so much opportunity around the world, that could be happening. And the fact that you've seen this at this level, at this intensity, at this um, resourced environment, gives you a perspective that many people, where you're from, don't have, and so I don't, you and I both still don't know how that's going to happen. Like, you don't know
Hmm.
how they're going to use that just quite yet, but it's already started to kind of give you perspective and goals, and an understanding that you're not going to be kind of in this small box, that you might have been in beforehand. And so um, I think for you it was okay. You're going back to where maybe there's not as many strength and conditioning resources, and so how do we create an environment where you can continue to learn? And that's where the podcast idea came from, and staying connected, and how do you maybe take some of the resources that you have created in the United States and bring them home,
Mm.
and and bring people to like myself and others. Maybe you bring them back to your area, and you create this kind of strength and conditioning community that way. You never know where you take it.
Yeah.
And I think I'm excited for you. You and I have talked about it, but I think this, for anybody that's listening, I think that that's important, right? Is finding, stepping outside of your comfort zone, because there's no growth in comfort, and and really challenging your ideals, and then coming back and figuring out a way to kind of make where you're at great, and
100%. As well as like, so I've recently discovered the power of LinkedIn. and I got the trial for free for a month, and I've just went ham. Like I've added as many SSE coaches from America and around Europe, Australia, and just like anywhere that I could find, some Hong Kong as well. And like everyone's so quick to connect with each other. So like I always just drop them a quick message to say hello, I appreciate your connection. Can I prick your brain? And I felt like I've developed a lot as an S&C coach just through having these interactions and speaking to different sort of sources on how they do it, how they program, how they think. A lot of the guests I've got coming up have been LinkedIn sort of connections. And I
Yeah.
think when you told me that start networking and just see where it goes from there, do the podcast, the thing that I kind of want to eventually achieve in here is like having a facility where people sort of come in from all over and just do what you essentially have. People come over, just chalk it up, and then just connect that way, and just do some great coaching as well.
Yeah, I think it's awesome. That's again that you have just because you've done a little bit more work than the average person, you've created a network that a lot of people that were in your community could only dream of. And it didn't take that much. To you just had to put yourself out there. And whenever you lift other people up, usually that comes back in some way, shape, or form. So you putting people and giving them a platform is lifting them up. And so they're naturally kind of indebted to you in some ways. And so you never know. Like I did my podcast for I think I can't remember if it was 5 years or 7 years. I can't remember what it was. It was a long time, um, but like still to this day, I have people that come up to me and talk about episodes. And that's to me that's really cool.
Mm,
And you'll have the same thing.
I hope so. Like that's for me. This is just like two coaches just talking up. Like I actually forget that we're this is getting posted somewhere. But I do like it because it also gets me it gives me a challenge to sort of keep up with what everyone's saying and think about my views and their views and how do we sort of connect in that sense as well, which is quite cool. I had Sachin McDonald on. He's Seattle as well. Um, he's at Max SC, um, and he has this philosophy where you can disagree, agree with a coach for like 95% of things, but the 5% of disagreements is how good coaches are made. Because if you can disagree on the five but find some common ground or some way to communicate those disagreements together, helps you grow as a coach.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, you and I mean, that's one of the first things I told you guys in your internship and University McKeefery lectures was, there's all kinds of different ways to do this, and when you're principle based, you can have conversations with people, and find common ground. When you talk about overload, well, you might do overload differently than I do overload, and I might think that yours is a little bit more risky than the way I do it, but we can have a conversation about it. But if you're triphasic and I'm super slow training and we want to fight that battle, then that's silly, right?
Mm,
Like, and you don't learn from each other. So I always try to take the good and leave the bad, and getting different perspectives. I mean, there's been so many times, especially doing podcasts, where there was a guest that I wasn't, maybe not as fired up to have on, because I didn't really agree with maybe what they were doing, or didn't really know much about it, or whatever. And almost every single time I did that, I learned something from those people.
mm,
I took something away, and so again, the more that you feed information, it doesn't mean you need to take it, doesn't mean that you need to go pound the drum for it, but having dialogue and challenging your ideals, you never know when you might use that. I think I told you guys this story, but I always use the example of when I was working in China. They took all the equipment out of the weight room because I told them I wanted new bumpers, and they thought that I said I didn't like the equipment, and so they took it all out, and we had to train a rowing team with nothing in there, and so if my program would have been based on machines, or if it would have been based on, Olympic lifts, I would have had a really hard time training the team for, however many days. But instead, we used man resistance, and we used time under tension, and we used, tempos, and, we crushed them, and
Yeah.
so, so you never know when you might use something too,
Yeah.
so.
The way I'm wired, when you told us that story, I went home and made programs solely based on manual resistance and time under tension. Because for me, I was like, this is actually a strong possibility that I might walk into a weight room and there's no weights. So
Yeah,
what do I do then? And then I kind of didn't want to be caught off guard if you asked us to do it. So I was like, right, home time, create as many programs as you can under these conditions.
yeah, yeah, sure.
um, when it comes to athletes, how do you ensure that the buy-in and the sort of program is being run the way that you see best fit?
Yeah, I mean, so much of it is done on the front end, building relationships with them. Whether it's our sit-down meetings, our goal-setting meetings, our why meetings, our the passing by and just bringing them in and have a conversation, or the phone calls at night, or text messages, or whatever. Like, there's a lot of work on the when people don't see. That's when you're building this buy-in, so that for that hour that you have them in the weight room, that they'll do what you want them to do. And it takes a tremendous amount of investment on your part, and sometimes that investment, blows up in your face, and you're like, how, it doesn't. It seems like it doesn't matter, but a lot of times it does, and 90% of the time it does. And whenever you invest in guys, and you really invest in them in their life as well, then getting them to go do a set of 8 is not so hard.
Mm. When it comes to the sort of recruitment phase, I know that a lot of the players go into your office and you have a meeting with them and their family members. What is it that sort of gets discussed? And I kind of have a backup question on this.
Yeah, I mean, mostly it's kind of laying out. I tell them a little bit about myself. I tell them about our program. I kind of help, give them information to ask questions on how our program is different than other programs, and then I lay out, what their goals are and how they're evaluated compared to the NFL players and things along those lines, and how we would go about developing them towards that. Because that's most people's goals that are coming to us, and and again, I mean, there's I've been doing this a long time. I could probably look at somebody and tell them whether or not they're going to be in the NFL or not, but I've always felt like I want to be a dream builder. I don't want to be a
Mm.
dream killer, and so lifting them up and defining what is good and helping them try to reach that. That's my job. It's up to them to see if they can overcome maybe some of the genetic flaws or some of the whatever that might be holding them back. But I've been doing this also long enough to know that there's a lot of guys that maybe don't check every box on paper, but they end up being phenomenal players.
Mm. When it comes to sort of you then motivating your athletes to push beyond their limits, is that those goals that you set during those meetings something that you use to push them and motivate them?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely helps the analytical part of it, right? If you're, 225 averages 25 reps and they're at 15 reps, then obviously, them gaining reps toward that is, it's going to be front and center. But more importantly, it's about, the things that that they've sacrificed, or what they've done outside of here to try to accomplish that goal, or who they might be letting down if they don't hit
Mm.
that goal. And those are the types of buttons that I'm trying to push, because if it's just, if it's just something that's kind of way out there, that's not always going to get it done. But if I'm tapping into some of those things, those emotions, people can do crazy things when they're emotionally driven.
See, this question came about because of the Parker twins. Um, they were in my freshman rack, and we were doing the 225 test. and you kind of go in their face, not in their face, but like in their space, and you were like, you set those goals during our meeting. I need to see them now, and that
Yeah.
just gives them an extra couple reps. And
Yeah.
to me, I was like, that's when I discovered the importance of having the player meetings before they join the program, and then keeping them accountable for what they said.
Yeah, that's a big thing. If you're going to go and you're going to set a goal, and I'm going to be a part of that, then you know, that human nature is one that when you're uncomfortable, it's hard to do it, right? To push through it. But that's part of the role of being a coach is helping people get past
Mm.
those obstacles. And sometimes that requires you to get up close and personal with dudes twice your size.
Triple
That's
in
okay.
my case.
Yeah, that's okay, right? I mean, but as well as I do that those guys like they appreciate that. They want to be pushed. They want to be great. And obviously you got to have the relationship built up to be able to do that,
Hmm.
right? And so, um, yeah, I mean, there's so much that goes on beyond just that 1 hour of training or those 2 hours of training, for your program to be effective. And if you're a very transactional coach where it's only the time that they're on the floor and that's all that matters, then, you know, definitely this is not the level for you. And I would argue that this isn't the profession for you.
Hmm.
You know,
That's a good point, because I previously, like off air, we were talking about conscious coaching, and I really learned the value of that book when I went to UW, and I saw the different personalities that there was in that weight room itself, and then it got me to think, right, Coach Bartholomew said this is how we need to treat this guy, this is how we need to treat that guy. Um, is that something that you're constantly sort of looking at in your athletes?
yeah, Brett's a close friend and, did a put out a phenomenal resource there. And, I think using his archetypes and, other group dynamics, and things along those lines, I think, um, anytime you lead 120 people and doing anything, like you have to be able to tap in and be able to motivate various different types of personalities and people and cultures and all those types of things. And so, learning about them, learning about their home, learning about their culture, learning about what makes them tick, those are all things that you can tap into, and then finding ways to get them to motivate each other,
Mm,
and create, accountability with competitions and those types of things. That's then you also have to put in the fun. Like I remember a Manny getting all dressed up for red, white, and boom.
my fairy wings.
So like I think you gotta be able to tap into all the human emotions. You got to be able to get people to to go beyond just what they're currently feeling. And you do that by keeping their goals in front of them. You keep that by keeping their role within the team in front of them. You keep that
Mm,
what they're sacrificing to be here in front of them. And when you do that, typically again getting them to count to 10 is not too hard.
100%. I solely put me building a relationship with Asa on that book, because Asa, he's a phenomenal freak athlete, but he's quite reserved when he's in the weight room. He like keeps to himself. He does more than what is asked of him all the time. But a situation happened where him and another athlete were sort of disagreeing with each other, and I started going, but in between I was like, "Right, guys, like we're a team, like let's focus on what's happening right now." And afterwards I went to him because I kind of knew his archetype, and I went, "Appreciate for how you handled that situation on the field, like appreciate, because that could have, although we're teammates, that could have ended a different way." And he's like, "Nah, we're friends, like it's easier." I was like, "I know, but like I just appreciate how everything was handled."
Yeah.
At the end of that session, he was walking out and I was by your office and I saw him look at me. Then he turned back, came and shook my hand and said, "Appreciate you for today, coach." And like that to me was like, not only did he call me coach, which I was surprised about, but he went out of his way to sort of,
Circle back. Yeah.
yeah, like,
It's cool. It's cool when you have those moments, and that's, I mean, obviously you taking the time to recognize what he was going through and, give him an ear. Sometimes that's all it takes, right? But yeah, I mean, when you work as hard as we work and there's as much emotion as there is, like it's going to get tense, and that's the thing. Like, this environment, this is why I say, like, unless you've been in this environment, like, don't say you want to be a college football strength and conditioning coach and have never worked in that environment. Um, don't tell me that you've been in a high school environment or you've been even in a pro environment. It's completely different,
mhm.
just because of the group dynamics. And um, you know, being a leader of that takes an awful lot of investment. You know, um, from knowledge, from your emotional, ties, your stress levels, all those types of things all factor in. And so, um, people wonder why people get paid what they get paid,
Mm.
or it takes as long as it takes. The hours that you have to, it's because you're doing things like that.
And I think Ali's been on the podcast as well, and she kind of alluded to how much actually outside of work that she communicates with athletes that are coming in or athletes who are currently in the program. How important is that for you as well?
Yeah, I mean, there's really not time off. Like, I don't have time off necessarily. I think, some people will say that, and or people will say that people wear that like a badge of honor, and that's a negative thing, and all that. But like, my family is integrated into what I do. Um, and this is just a part of it. Like, this is, again, it's the old adage: if you don't love what you do, or if you love what you do, you don't work a day in your life. I mean,
Mm.
it's got to be a part of who you are. And so if you're looking for vacations, if you're looking for a definitive, this is work time, this is not work time, and all that, then this is probably not the role for you. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's plenty of jobs out there where you can do that and still be a great strength coach.
Mm.
you know but this particular job, being at this level where you have such a role in their development as people as well as athletes, it takes a lot of time where outside of work that you're putting time into. And again, I wouldn't have it any other way. Like, if somebody is, I've literally dragged kids out of drug houses, because they were in bad situations, and I'm glad they called me. I'm
Mm.
glad that when they've been at their lowest points, that they've felt like they could call me. And I'm glad when they've been at their highest points that they wanted to reach out and share that with me. And so, um, that responsibility, that opportunity to be involved in people's lives like that is, to me, that's more, it's more about the money than that, right?
Mm.
And so, it's more of a calling for me, and I'm a faith-based guy, so that it falls into my faith as well. But, like, for people that are going into this, it's, if you're very, if you're very protective of your time, protective of your space, then I think it's important for you to get into that environment and see if it's really right for you. You know,
Yeah.
you either get charged up by it or you don't. And again, it goes back to what I was saying earlier about the power of an internship. Not doing something. Think about the money that you save, and that the time that you don't waste by figuring out, hey, this isn't for me.
Hundred
And
percent.
I've had people. It's actually, the other day I had a former intern that came and did an internship with us, did a great job, but then, at the end of it, he's like, this isn't really for me. I'm going to be a cop. and he left, and he ended up coming out here to Seattle, and he's a highway patrolman out here in Seattle. And I didn't know that, and he looked me up and came in, and and again talked about how that that internship was pivotal in his development as a person, and how he uses some of those lessons even in the job that he currently has. And to me, that's again, when you get in that environment, that's like internships get this bad rap, but they really are super important.
100%. And I attribute my whole success and what I've been up to since then because of the sort of hard lessons I've had to learn while at that internship. Like I know, like I invested to go across there. Like to me, it was out of pocket. It was no one paid for it. It was solely me. But the amount of knowledge that I gained from that and the experience, I saw it as the biggest investment for my future because I was under some great coaches and that was the only way I could flourish in this industry. Um,
Yeah.
what's your sort of most memorable moment as an S&C coach?
I mean, there's so many. It's hard to pick some. I mean, the ones that stand out are obviously the ones where the athletes changed over time. That were very resistant early on, and end up standing, being willing to stand in front of a bullet for you if it came to that, right? The one I typically share is, I had an athlete we were oil and water all the way through his career, and I felt like I didn't reach him. And then, 5 years later, after he had court mandated military service, he came in and had his military uniform on and was crying and gave me a big hug and told me that I was the only person that wouldn't put up with this stuff, and, so stuff like that. I mean, that, to me is what it's all about, ultimately. And I know that sounds cliche, and I think there's a lot of people out there that will, you know, will, want to talk about, the time, the lack of investments or again, I mean, I think you got to be in it for, the way that I always compare my job is that I would have, if I didn't do this, I would have either been in the military or I would have been a gym teacher, and making whatever money they make, right? And as long as I'm making a little bit more than that, and I get to wear shorts and a t-shirt to work every day, I'm pretty happy, and and I think, again, to be at this place like this or any college program and have those kind of responsibilities, you get a lot of really cool moments, and you get to make an impact in a really cool way, and you get to expose your kids to really cool people, and you get to network and build relationships with people all around the world, and those things are priceless.
Yeah. So what's one piece of advice that you'd give a young coach, Mark?
I think, for me personally, I think it would have been, that not to get too wrapped up in the pride of the highest level. Like you couldn't have told me that I wasn't going to be an NFL head strength coach when I was early in my career. And, once you get to that and you reach that, and, it's phenomenal and it's great and all those types of things. But I've been just as happy working with, Eastern Michigan as I was, running an NFL team or, being at the highest levels. Like, I think, really figuring out where your passion is, put yourself at wherever you can fulfill that, not to be in a rush, to make sure that you don't miss steps, but also, kind of like you said, make sure that you're not staying past the time that you need to stay either. I think there's too many assistants out there that are okay just being assistants, and or aren't confident to put themselves out there, and so I think you gotta challenge yourself. And I think the role of a head strength coach versus the role of an assistant strength coach are two completely different roles, and different jobs. And so you gotta figure out what you like in that too. But I would tell people that, figure out where you want to be, don't get caught up in the pride part of it. I mean, I could have very easily made a name for myself being a high school strength coach and speaking or podcasting or doing things like that, every bit as much as I have as a college strength coach or pro strength coach. And I think, figuring that out and then filling the money bucket, the pride bucket, all those other things, other ways.
Yeah. What's one piece of advice that you would give new S&C coaches coming into the industry?
I think that, but I think you got to find a mentor.
Mm.
I think you got to find somebody. You got to tap into a network. You have to um, be able to bounce ideas off somebody. From programming early in your career to, I mean, it's my book, right? It's the CEO Strength Coach. To be a great technician early on, you need somebody for that, right? You need somebody to teach you how to be a better manager, and then you need to have somebody teach you how to be an entrepreneur and forward thinking and constantly sharpen the sword and putting yourself out there like podcasting and things like that, and um, if you find mentors in that and you constantly take action, I think that's the next thing is taking action.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Shy boys
then
don't get sweets.
the shy boy don't get sweets. Exactly right. I think that's probably one of the best things that you've done with this is, I mean, I told 3 or 4 of you guys the same thing, and you're one of the only ones that took action.
Mm.
And I would argue that you've taken a big step, maybe over some of those guys, and so like, um, take action, continue to grow, always challenge your ideals, and I think that's probably and not be and make the big time where you're at. Don't get caught up in the next step. Make where you're at great,
Mm-hmm.
and if you do that, then you'll find as long as you're networking and doing those types of things, then opportunities will find you.
Yeah, and I think that what we previously discussed, something that I've hopefully got coming up, and that's came just from networking and just sort of building these connections. What's the best way that you would advise someone to reach out to coaches or do their research on the coach?
Yeah, I mean, I think what you're doing, LinkedIn, and like Brian Mann always has a good quote where he's like, I get 100 emails every day, but I get 5 messages on Twitter.
Mm.
5 they don't, maybe where they're active, where they don't have as much interaction, but I think being really intentional with your interaction, don't just give, hey, I'm so and so, and I'm a new coach. What would you tell me to do? Be more like, hey, look, this is where I'm at. This is what I'm thinking is the next step. What's maybe a step that you took that would be similar in my role, or I know you went from this stage to this stage. How did you make that jump?
Mm.
Be specific about the questions that you're asking. Um, and I think when you do that, people want to help. I mean, there's nobody that's in this business that's done it by themselves. And so I think being willing to put yourself out there and then asking intelligent questions, I think you're always going to get a response. And if you don't, I think part of the reason why I'm the way that I am is because there was definitely people that did not respond,
Mm.
you know, and I felt to me it was if I was given an opportunity to have a platform like that, I was going to make sure that I responded.
100%. I've found that as well, but I'm the exact same as you. Like anytime that someone reaches out to me or asks me a question, I'm straight away replying to them because I know how it feels not to get a reply. um, with your the CEO strength coach, I don't think I've told you this story, but when I got the internship to UW, I had previously read your book, and I didn't realize that I was partnered with the author of CEO Strength Coach, until after our meeting, like our initial meeting, and it wasn't then that I matched the two names together. I was like, Coach Mac. Oh shit! I've got the same guy, and that to me, I was just like, damn, like that's pretty wild.
That's funny. I didn't know. No, that's funny.
No, it was pretty funny because like I had read it going back and forward to uni because I had some traveling, so I just put the book on audio and I'll drive down, listen to it, make notes, and then I'll write them down. And then when I go, because I was originally meant to go to Fresno because that's where you were, but then you went to UW and you sort of took us on, and I was like, Coach Ron McKeefery rings a bell. Why does that ring a bell? But like I just went about it, and
Yeah.
then our original meeting with Andrew happened, and I was like, Ron McKeefery. I put it to the back of my head again, and then when I was heading out there, I put on the audiobook again because like I wanted to like optimize my time there, and I was like, Ron McKeefery, Ron McKeefery. Oh, okay.
That's funny. Yeah. I mean, again, I think, um, I tell people all the time that there's a big difference between Ron McKeefery and Coach Mac. Ron McKeefery is, more introverted, more reserved, more, you know, um, we'll do things like write a book and things like that, right? And then the Coach Mac is, the guy that runs around with his head cut off and screams at everybody, and um, I think as a coach, you gotta find that balance of how do you protect yourself,
Mhm.
right? Protect and have this kind of not alter ego, but this kind of person that you become. I'm not saying to be an idiot, but I'm saying, you know, like, um, like my natural instinct isn't to put myself out there. It's not to be gregarious and speak
Mhm.
in front of hundreds of people and all that, but that's part of it. If you want to separate yourself in this crowded space, and you have to do things like that. And same thing if I can't tell you how many coaches have told me, "Oh, I'm not a good public speaker." Well, I get up and I speak in front of 120 guys every single day. And it's not something that if you would have asked me when I was in your shoes, like, do I want to speak in front of 120 people every day? I would have said, no way, no how. But like, that's what I have to do.
Mhm.
And so I think it's a good lesson for coaches as well that all those things that you think that you don't need. You know, the reason why I named that book CEO Strength Coach is because if you develop those skills, those are the same skills it takes to run companies. You
Mhm.
know, and I think it's a big job, whether it's managing a big budget or managing a staff or group dynamics of, hundreds, 100 plus people, or, vision casting and, goal setting, or all these different things. Like, that's why, I've been able to do things outside of strength conditioning on a high level as well, because I just take what you do in the weight room every single day and apply it.
Yeah. Uh, I'm sort of similar. So when I get nervous, or when I was younger, especially, I used to have a really big stutter. Like, especially because like I'm Portuguese, so I learned Portuguese and then had to come to Scotland and learn English. So I had this really bad stutter where I couldn't do a lot of sentences without a big stutter in between. And it wasn't until I started coaching and teaching classes at a local gym that I just completely gone. And I think that was the development of that uncomfortableness that we've been speaking about. Is like I had to be uncomfortable speaking to like in front of 5 people, which then just completely removes that stutter. And I do think like you create these like little pockets of personalities when you're coaching, and that was one of the biggest things that coaching has helped me with personally.
Yeah, totally. I think that's maybe one of those lessons as well for most coaches. They get in and there's some aspect of it. Maybe they're doing well in five things, but that sixth thing they're doing not so good in, and then that's enough reason to kind of give them a push out of it. And everybody's got something that they have to work on. Everybody does,
Mm-hmm.
and that's the thing about strength and conditioning is nobody, like I didn't take classes on leadership. I didn't take classes on budgeting and finance. I didn't take classes on group dynamics and those types of things. And so you have to learn. You have to challenge. You have to constantly be learning things outside of just strength and conditioning. And so when I'm watching those videos, half of them are strength and conditioning videos. Half of them are, you know, time management and
Mm-hmm.
leadership and all these other things that might make my job better or easier. And um, definitely groups, public speaking is one of those.
I still use Trello.
Yeah, that's good.
I do have one last question. Can you
Yeah,
explain swag and what that means to you?
like swag. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Yeah. So where he's going with this is when we're writing our workout cards for the very first workout. We obviously periodize out some of the testable lifts and things like that, but the other lifts, it's just a guess. And so to make it sound official, I call it a swag, with a scientific wild ass guess,
Yes, sir.
and they always get a kick out of it. So yeah, that's what swag means.
No, when I heard, I was like, "This is genius." Because some of the accessory work and the padding work is most oftentimes like we'll just throw spaghetti at the wall, see if it sticks.
Yeah, yeah. But I mean, again, you've done this long enough. You're in this environment. You're around the athletes enough. You kind of get a pretty good idea of what it should be, and I think there's all kinds of things with forced reps and tempo and all that you can make almost anything work.
Hmm.
And so yeah, it's a scientific wild ass guess, Manny.
I love it. Um, what is Pac-10 looking? Pac-10, Big Ten looking like for you guys?
Yeah, I mean, we're excited about it. We're trying to finish things out here, right, with doing this the right way and try to win national championship for the Pac-12, the last one, and see if we can't pull that off first. But I think it's going to give us a big platform that we can go into, and um, you know, I'm excited for it. Hopefully, we continue the success that we've been on.
It has been amazing to watch, and we sort of spoke when before the podcast that obviously I don't get the live view of the game, but I still get excited watching the games and how you guys are doing. And like on the highlight reels, you can always tell which coach is which just by like their mannerisms and the way that pick athletes up. I can always tell when AJ's picking an athlete up or you're picking an athlete up.
Yeah, that's true. That's funny. Yeah,
I'm like, that's Coach Mac.
yeah, yeah. It's yeah. I think people that are listening. I mean, whether or not you're just like Manny said, if you're ever passing through Seattle, we're an open book. We don't hide anything. I think people, this is not, the 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 genius isn't in the X's and O's. The genius is in how it's ran. And the all the things that go into it. And so coming in and seeing it and knowing that there's an ebb and flow throughout the year
Mhm.
too, I think is important. But you're always welcome. And then people that are interested in internships, we actively try to bring people from around the world because I think it's good for them. I think it's good for us. And I think it's really good for our athletes to
Mhm.
see different cultures and different people. And I mean, you probably had as many people ask you about Scotland as you were asking about Seattle when you were here.
100%. Cam asked me what some Scottish things were, and I told him what the Glasgow kiss was, which it sounds better than what it is. So a Glasgow kiss is like you grab someone's head and you stick it in them. And anytime that I see Cam on the field now, and like he poses for a photo op, I'm like, that better be heading into a Glasgow kiss, and he just like starts giggling in the comments.
That's funny. Yeah, so I think it's cool. Like, I mean, the fact that you guys are still communicating, I think that proves the point of just how cool of an experience it is, and how for you to develop a relationship with an athlete, maintain that's awesome, and for you to be able to root for him and see him play, and um, that's every young coach should experience that.
100%. And like I will never forget the first time that I got called coach or I appreciate you coach. Like that. So in the UK we don't get called coaches as much. Like some athletes might, but you don't really get there's not really that culture of getting called a coach. So like experiencing that for the first time, that to me was like okay, this is a bit bigger than what I thought.
Yeah, yeah. It's a term of respect, and it's a term of it's a noble profession, and I think that's why it's such a big deal. But it's such a big responsibility.
100%. And I think that's why, like, anytime that you do post those internships out, I always make sure to say, if you're ever looking to get into that space, contact me and I'll do my best to help you out through these processes. Because I know the process I went through and its pros and cons, but if someone can do it better, then I'm more than happy to share that.
Sure. Yeah, no, that's awesome, man. I appreciate that.
Now, honestly, the program changed my coaching perspective. So for someone else from this side of the pond to get that similar experience, I think that to me would bring the industry up essentially.
Yeah, that's what we're trying to do, right? We're trying to give a great experience and make the profession better a little bit, one coach at a time. And to me, again, I think it makes us grow. Being able to learn from other people's cultures as well. And you made your mark, Manny. You made your mark here, man.
I do appreciate that. That was my goal with the 6 weeks, was to at least make sure that you remembered who I was.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
No, I appreciate you so much for coming on today. I know you're a busy guy and you've took an hour and a bit off to speak to me, so I do appreciate that a lot.
No, absolutely, man. Appreciate you having me on, and I know how much goes into these things. So really, really proud of you for putting your effort into this and contributing to the body of work out there. And people, again, we're still in the first 100 years of strength and conditioning. So being able to document it with things like this, I think is super important.
Mm-hmm.
And so I appreciate what you're doing.
That's a new perspective that I did not think about. I appreciate the kind words, though. Like, you having the confidence in me to do this and sort of go my own path has really shaped who I am as a coach. So I do appreciate that a lot as well.
Cool, man.
Perfect. Peace.
Thanks, Manny.